All right, so everyone's talking about it, right? The U.S. housing market, it's been just crazy for years now. I mean, record high prices, hardly anything out there to even buy.
Oh, yeah. It's been a wild ride.
Totally. And now we've got this potentially massive shift coming. Former President Trump just dropped this executive order saying he wants to deflate the housing bubble.
Yeah, that definitely got everyone's attention.
Sure. So for anyone listening, whether you're trying to buy a place, you're into investments, or you just want to understand what's happening with the economy, this is the big question, right?
Right.
What could all of this mean for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We'll look at the potential impact on the economy, what financial experts are predicting based on their analysis, and we'll also see if history has any lessons for us, any similar situations that might give us some insight into what could happen.
Right.
Our goal here is to give you the most important information so you can wrap your head around this whole thing and see how it might affect you personally.
It's all about connecting the dots for our listeners, right?
Absolutely. And to give you the big picture.
Exactly, because we all see the headlines, but we want to know what happens next.
Right, exactly. So it's not just about knowing what happened, but what might happen.
And what it means for people. So some economists we've looked at think this could actually lead to a necessary market correction.
Right. And the phrase deflating the bubble really jumps out. When we look back at history, have there been times when the government has taken such direct action to try and control housing prices? And what happened in those instances?
Well, using that specific language in an executive order might be new, but the government has definitely tried to influence the housing market before in different ways.
Right. I mean, it makes sense. They want to try and keep things stable.
Absolutely. And they've used all sorts of tools. Think about changes to mortgage interest rates, tax breaks to encourage people to buy homes, or even just how lending is regulated.
Okay, so they've got a lot of levers they can pull.
Exactly. And the results, well, they've been mixed.
As you'd expect, I guess.
Yeah, it often depends on what's happening with the overall economy at the time.
So it's not just one thing in isolation.
Right, exactly. Some measures worked the way they were supposed to, others had unintended consequences, and some just didn't really do much.
It's a complex system, for sure. So for all those listeners out there hoping to finally buy a home, does this executive order mean they might finally get their chance? Or could this actually make it a riskier time to buy?
Well, based on what we're seeing, there's a chance we could see more homes become available and prices easing up a bit, which would definitely help with affordability.
Okay, so there's a potential upside there.
Yeah, but the big question is how much will prices actually change? Nobody knows for sure. And waiting around for a huge crash, well, that's a gamble.
Right, you could be waiting forever.
Exactly. You'd have to weigh that possibility of lower prices against things like current interest rates and your own financial situation.
Right, so it's not a one-size-fits-all answer.
Definitely not.
Now, what about for the investors out there? How could this kind of market intervention create opportunities or risks?
Well, if the market cools down, that could mean a chance to buy properties at lower prices.
Okay, so that's the opportunity side.
Exactly. But the flip side is that property values could drop, and so could rental income if the economy as a whole weakens.
So there's definitely a risk there too.
For sure, investors are going to be watching things really closely, the number of homes being sold, how many are sitting on the market, and of course, how prices are moving.
Right, trying to get a sense of where things are headed.
Absolutely.
And for the economy as a whole, the stated goal here is to prevent an even bigger crash down the road. But are there other economic consequences we should be thinking about?
Stabilizing the housing market is definitely a huge priority when it comes to the economy as a whole.
Right, because if things get too out of control, it can have ripple effects everywhere.
Exactly. An unsustainable boom can lead to real instability. But intervening always comes with some level of risk.
Right, you're trying to control something that's incredibly complex.
Exactly. And if the market cools off too quickly, that could actually slow down the entire economy.
Okay, so it could backfire in a way.
Yeah. It could affect consumer confidence, the construction industry, and all sorts of related sectors.
It's all interconnected.
It really is. And what the Federal Reserve does and just the general economic conditions will play a big role too.
So a lot of factors to consider.
For sure.
Okay, so just to quickly recap for those listening, if you're hoping to buy a home, we might see prices soften and more options opening up, but there's still a lot of uncertainty.
Right.
For investors, there's a chance to make some gains, but also the risk of losses depending on how the market adjusts.
And it's important to remember that experts don't all agree on how likely a correction is or how severe it might be.
Right, and history shows us that these things don't always go the way we expect.
Definitely.
So given all that we've talked about today, all the complexities of the housing market, all the factors at play, what one piece of information do you think would be the biggest clue about where the market's going? How would you keep an eye on things if you were trying to make sense of this whole situation?
That's a great question and one for all of us to think about.